welcome to the No Fear Sock Knitting class. My name is Denise, and this is class 7, 2 at a time socks. Today I am going to teach you how to get your socks set up so that you can knit them 2 at a time, both socks at the same time on one set of needles, whether that's 2 circular needles or magic loop. The point is to be able to knit them at the same time. Now, many people like to knit them 1 at a time. For me personally, I do find that a little bit easier to manage. I don't have to pay as much attention when I'm knitting to manage my yarn. However, knitting 2 at a time socks is hands down much faster. And I think it's definitely a method that I go back and forth between. I usually start with 2 at a time socks, and then sometimes I'll divide them and go back to 1 at a time, or I start 1 at a time and then put them on and do 2 at a time. The point is, it's really an amazing skill to have in your bag of tricks. So we are going to cover that today. And I'm going to change up the format just a little bit here and I'm going to insert pictures for you as I'm talking. I've got my notes here, so I'm going to insert pictures for you as I'm talking so that you can see what I'm referring to when I'm talking about a cake of yarn and how to prep your yarn in order to work 2 at a time. So like I said, I will show you how to put the stitches on both 2 circulars and magic loop. So let's start. You basically start with your big hank of yarn. Let me just grab. Okay, doesn't matter. We can start with one of these. The point is just to explain. So you're going to start with a skein of yarn, or you may have purchased yarn from someplace else and you've got 2 balls of yarn. The point is you need 2 balls of yarn ultimately in order to do this. I have seen people attempt to knit with the yarn coming from outside the ball. When you wind a skein of yarn into a cake, you can pull from the center of the ball and from the outside. I have seen people attempt it that way. I do not advise it. It can get very tangled. It can get very messy. So I do recommend separating your yarn into 2 balls. So how are we going to do that? You are going to take your skein right here. You're going to open this up and you're going to put this on your ball winder or the back of a chair or over your knees, or have one of your children or spouse hold their hands like this and you wrap the yarn, drape the yarn over their arms, and then just wind yourself a ball. Now, this is ultimately, now I have about a ball pre-wound. This is a wound ball, okay, and it's wound into a cake. So here it is. It's white, of course, and you could see it. Of course you can see it, but this is a cake of yarn. So if anyone refers to a cake, this is what they're referring to. So you want to wind your ball into this, or like I said, a hand wound ball. It really doesn't matter. What I like to do, I have a very small little kitchen scale, and what I usually do is most balls come in 100-gram skeins. So this is not, but let's pretend that this is a 100-gram skein, which you're winding into this. So this in theory then obviously is 100-gram, not in theory, this is 100 grams. Sometimes in my experience, you can be a little over, you can be a little under. Most of the time, dyers are a little bit over. So when I wound the skein for the pair of socks I'm going to demonstrate with, that skein measured out at 109. Okay, at 109 grams. So what I needed to do, and I like to be a little bit precise. Do you have to weigh your yarn? Absolutely not. You can just go right ahead and eyeball it, and if the 2 balls look about the same, you're good to go. But what I like to do is wind the skein into a cake, and then I put this cake on a scale so I know exactly how much this weighs. Like I said, the cake that I wound up was 109 grams, and then what I do is I will take the end, find the end of the ball, put this in my ball winder, and keep this on the scale. All right, I let this sit on the scale, and I start winding off this now. I start winding off from the ball sitting on the scale into another ball. And you literally watch the grams, watch the numbers decrease on the scale until you've reached the halfway point. That's it. Super duper simple. That is what I do. Sorry, I just had to move notifications off my phone. So that is what I do to get two perfectly measured out balls. If it's 109, obviously one's going to be 54, one's 55. It really doesn't matter. The point, and again, as I said, you don't even have to measure. I just like to measure because I that's just me. I'm a little obsessive compulsive about my cakes and winding, etc. So now, once you've done that, you're going to have, hold on, let's get myself sorted here. You're going to have two cakes. And this is what I have wound. As you can see, I've already started prepping these for you for the class, but you're going to have two cakes of yarn set up. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get it absolutely perfect, and sometimes it gets a little wonky on the bottom. It really does not matter at all. So you're going to now have two cakes. You need two in order to do this. Okay? So we wind these down, they measure the same, and now I'm going to show you, so you've got that all set up. Now what I like to do is wind, let me just rest these here. Hold on, let me get myself sorted. I just dropped the ball, dropped the cake. And what I like to do is I knit my cuffs ahead of time. So here's the cuff from one, here's the cuff from the other, and I've got them all set. Now this is going to be, you can follow my shorty, my No Fear shorty socks pattern. You can absolutely use that. For me, I'm using this opportunity to do this, to knit a pair of socks for a family member. So I am straying from my own pattern, and I'm just knitting a full adult size pair of socks. So that is what I'm doing here. But the reason I like to knit my cuff, and you'll see this once I've put these all on one needle, you're going to understand a little bit better. But when you end with, this is a knit 2 purl 2 rib that I'm doing. Let me just open that up so you can see. It's a knit 2 purl 2 rib that I've got going on. Okay. And when you go work across the first half, you're going to end with 2 purls. When you're ready to go to the next ball, if I had both cuffs on at the same time, and some people can do it with no problem, I personally don't like to do it. When you go to knit, so you finish this first cuff, and if you have them on the needles at the same time and you go and knit the second cuff, what can happen is your yarn is not going to be in the right place in order to do the knit 2. You have to bring the yarn up between the needles, and I find that very, very frustrating. Again, that will make more sense once I have them all on one needle, and you'll see what I mean. So what I do is knit one cuff. So I knit this first cuff, and I slipped the stitches onto just 2 double pointed needles. While I don't like knitting on double pointed needles, I do own them sometimes for reasons like this, and there may be a circumstance. It's just something that to have in your stash, whether you're using them or not. So I slipped the first cuff onto a spare set, and I cast on the second set, the second cake, and I knit the other cuff. So now I have my 2 cuffs, and I am ready to put this cuff on this needle, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. And then I'm going to move these off the 2 circulars and then put them on a magic loop needle, and you'll see how we knit. Okay, so let's get started. Here we go. Now, as I said before, here are my 2 cuffs. The goal is to get this cuff onto this needle. I've knit the second cuff. This one's hanging out, so now I have to get this onto here. So now what I'm going to do you see that the yarn is coming from the right side? If I'm looking at this full on, the yarn is coming from the right side of the work where it normally would be when you're ready to start your knitting. Okay, if you look down in there, I've just tucked in my ends. So you have to be sure that when you transfer the other cuff onto the needle, that the yarn is in the same position. So in this case, I need the yarn to be coming from the same side. So what you're going to do is simply slip the stitches from this needle onto this needle. Now, I am right-handed, so I like to slip from the left needle onto the right. So I'm just going to switch these. Okay. I am going to leave this cuff where it is on the needle. I'm going to go to the other end, and you have to slide. You're going to have you're going to have the front set of stitches, the back set of stitches, the same way that you've been working all along. So I'm going to leave these a little further back on the needle. I'm going to trace my way to the front needle. My yarn is in the right place. Sorry, went off camera here. My yarn is in the right place, and I am now going to simply slip these stitches from this needle to this needle, and you always slip purlwise, okay? That's always your default. So I'm just going to very carefully slip these over. 1, 2, and this is just a regular full-size sock, so I'm going to be slipping 32 stitches over. Okay. And that is my son. I don't know if you all just heard the little click click. My son's trying to get my attention. Okay, here we go, you guys. So I'm just slipping these stitches over. Camera, there we go. The camera was having a hard time focusing. That's better. Okay. And you just very carefully slide them over. Okay, this is not as mysterious or difficult as many people think that it is. This I think you may be surprised by how short this video actually is. Okay. I just want to get everybody started on this. So now I'm done. I'm going to put that down. And as you can see, look at that. I now have the first half of the second cuff on my needles. So now I need to do the back half of the cuff. So I'm going to trace it, find the back needle. We are working 2 circulars right now. Okay, going to slide these to the end. Okay, make sure my yarn is in the right place. And now I'm just going to simply, again, just slide these over. Come on, focus, please, focus. There we go. I'm just going to slide these all over as if to purl. Yes, I'm looking at the inside of the sock, but that does not matter. Okay, so I'm just going to slide these all over. Okay, and here we go. Now, you're going to knit the sock the same way that you've been knitting. Some of you may have questions about, well, how do I do a heel flap and gusset sock with this method? You kind of can't. You have to take, because of the way the stitches are sitting on the needles and because of the nature of a heel flap and gusset, you're going to have to switch back to one at a time in order to get that done. I don't know of anyone that can, now, I'm glad this happened so that you can see what happens when you're doing the ribbing. I'll go back to the heel flap and gusset in 1 minute. So now, voila, we are all on one needle. I'm just going to wrap this up so it looks a little neater here. Get that off. Okay, so here we are. So my 2 cakes are sitting right here. Both of my my cuffs are now on one set, which is 2 circular needles, and I am basically ready to start. That's it. I'm ready to go. Now, the yarn here on this end can be very easily, when you finish knitting the cuff and you end with purl 2, your yarn is in this position. If you bring the yarn over, just over the top and start knitting, you're going to get a yarn over. So you have to make sure your yarn is in the right place and you're going to keep going. Now, the reason I don't knit my cuffs 2 at a time is because let's look at the second sock. Look at where the yarn is. The yarn is coming. Here's the needle. I'm going to come a little closer so you can see. Here is the needle. Here's where my yarn is. When I'm ready to start, if I bring this yarn over the top, I'm going to get a yarn over. So what you have to do is make a little space. You have to go in between, just like this, and I'm going to take the cake and pull it through. Now, if you're working a cuff, let's just push this back together. If you are working a cuff, just think about it. You're going to have to do that over and over and over again. I'm going to undo that and put it back so you can show you one more time. Okay, so here is your needle. Okay, if you're here, you can bring it in between and start knitting, but it's not going to be easy to manage. So you have to go through, and you can't obviously go like this because you're going to get a yarn over. So you have to go through between the two cables and pull that skein up and over. And again, who wants to do that? You know, if you're knitting a 20 round cuff, who wants to do that at the end of every intersection? I sure don't. So now you look now and everything is in the right place. My yarn is in the right place for both, and I am ready to start knitting. I'm ready to go. Perfect. Now, the way to manage the two balls of yarn, okay, I'm going to knit across and show you what happens when they're not in a bag. The key to managing the yarn is to have them in a bag, and I'll show you why in a second. So I am now ready to start. Now I tend to push all of my stitches together really close, but I'll show you what I do when I get to the second sock. I just find it easier to hold. So I'm now ready to knit, and I'm going to do it as always in real time for you. And I'm just going to start. So I finished my cuff, slide my cable underneath, finished my cuff, and now I am just knitting across. So I am going to knit. I'm looking down at my stitches, and I'm just going to very easily knit across. Give myself a little yarn and keep knitting. Whoops. Okay. Knitting across here. I'm knitting across the first half of the first cuff. Okay, this is what my hands are looking like as I'm going across. And I just realized I am back on the white background because since I'm knitting this very rich, beautiful sort of indigo, shades of indigo blue here, or shades of blue, I thought it would be easier to see with the white background. If I tried this on the pink background and it was just a mess. So everything was a little bit too dark. Plus, I don't have as much sunlight today. I'm recording a little later in the day, so I thought this would be a lot easier to see. So now I am at the last stitch on the first cuff, and I'm just going to knit that. Okay, so now I've got this opening. So what I'm going to do now is go into, slide this one back a little bit, continue knitting. I'm going to go into that first stitch on the second cuff. I usually pull this back a little, pick up the second skein, pick up the strand of yarn from the second skein, and just keep knitting. And that's it. I just knit across. How you situate this other, some people like to keep it bunched together because they've now got a little bit more of an anchor. They've got a little more to hold on to. I've also seen knitters doing two at a time and they push it completely out of the way so they can keep going. It is not, let's see the other end. It's not going to fall off because one complete needle is in progress. This is the other needle is engaged and you're knitting on that one. This is the other needle. Nothing's going to fall off, so you don't have to worry about pushing it to the other end. So now I'm going to just finish this up and I'll show you how to turn to do the back half. Okay, so we're knitting across, knitting across. Okay, I can hear my kids singing in the background. They're down in the living room right now. Okay, so keep knitting across. Okay. Alrighty, here we go. Knitting across, almost to the end. I've got 2 stitches left. Okay. Now I'm done and I'm ready to turn. So what I'm going to do, I like to keep mine a little bit closer together. What I'm going to do here is pull this needle out. I'm going to turn. Now look at where my yarn is. Can you see that the yarn is now crossed? This is where I ended. So when I was here, let me see if I can pull out a little bit more so you can see better. Okay, here is where I ended. Okay, when I'm ready to turn, my yarn is now crossing over. Okay, that I don't want. So what you do is you take this ball and move them over. Just switch the position. Okay, but now I'm going to put them back. What I do, This is just how I do it, okay? Now, some people, I've also seen people do this. They do this, and when they're ready to turn, they turn this way. So instead of turning, they turn this way, they turn the other way. No. You know what? Forget that, because I find it very, very confusing, so I don't even want to teach you that. What I like to do is move the two balls. So now I am back into position. What is this little fluff that keeps getting in the way here? Sorry about that, guys. So I am now back. So this one, I will just move to here, and I am ready to continue knitting. Now, let me move this back and put this, keep this here, and I'm going to put it in a bag. Here is this bag I made. Again, I hope that you can, let me put it down a little flatter. I made this little project bag. It is a simple drawstring bag. Okay, this particular one has a little pouch that is sewn in. It's a little notions pouch that's sewn into the bag, and this is called a sock sack. That is what this pattern is. I will link this in the show notes for you down below, but this is the perfect size, and because it has this little divider, now you can just do it as a plain divider, or you can do it with the pocket when you sew the pattern, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to have that. This is just what I had on hand. You're going to put one ball on one side, one ball on the other side. I'm going to turn this down so you can see. Okay, so now when I was finished, the yarn was in this position. Okay, we're crossed over. All I do is flip the bag, and I keep going. I never have to move. I never have to move my yarn as I'm knitting. All I do is flip the bag. So let's see that again. Trying to pull out a little bit wider here, guys. I just have something on the table over here, but here, let's go this way so you can see a little bit better. There we go. All right, and I'm going to knit this again and show you how to manage the balls. So here I am. So my balls, my two cakes are right here. I am knitting. I'm just going to pull these a little off camera. There's only so much room, but I'm trying to keep it so that you guys can see. I'm going to trace to the other end. I am going to knit across. My yarn is in the right position. Okay, I just want to pull that needle out, and I'm going to once again knit across in real time. And here we go. I'm knitting across. La la la. As you can see, I decided to polish my nails. Let's just have a little chit chat for a second, guys. Decided to polish my nails today. The name of this colorway, it's an Essie colorway, just in case anyone wants to see, and it is called Angora Sweater. That is the name of this colorway. So I'm knitting across. And you know, I do have to say there is something really incredibly satisfying about knitting socks two at a time. It also really makes you look incredibly smart. I mean, people are usually impressed that you can knit a pair of socks in general, but the fact that you're now knitting them two at a time, what? Blows people's minds. So, okay, here we are. We're knitting across the back half now. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to insert my needle, drop this strand, pick up the other strand, and I'm just going to keep knitting. And really, this, like I said, I'm knitting right now an adult sock. So this is going to have, this has a 20 round cuff. I decided to just put a little bit of white on the end just because I thought it would be pretty. And 20 round cuff, and I'm probably going to make the leg about, oh, I don't know, 70 rounds, 70 or 80 rounds. So this is going to be, so the person I'm knitting them for can wear them in a boot, like in an ankle boot, and they'll come up rather high. So here we go. I'm going to just continue knitting across. And as you can see, I am now knitting from the second cake, which is coming from this first pocket. So let's just keep going. I'm almost to the end. Almost to the end. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. Last stitch. I'm going to drop this. When I turn my work first. It's just what I do. Hold on to the strand I just finished knitting with. I turn, grab my bag, turn, and keep going. And that is how I knit my socks two at a time. Now, let's just talk. I move this back over and I'm ready to continue. And I'm just going to keep going. Now, I know some of you may have a question about heels and toes. So I'm going to pause for a moment, talk about that, and then we're going to do this on Magic Loop. So I wanted to come back on quickly. I hope that first tutorial, that first demonstration was clear for you. It really is relatively simple. Once you've done your cuffs, you're just going to slide the stitches on and it's just yarn management. The trickiest part of that, if you even want to use that word tricky, is managing your yarn and managing the turning. Now, what do you do when you get to the heel? If you are working a heel flap and gusset, I've never seen a tutorial. If you can find one, please link it down below and tag me and let me know, because I've never seen a tutorial, a 2 at a time tutorial, and I looked at a lot of them before recording this. I'm sorry it's getting a little bit dark, guys. You can still see me. I've never seen a 2 at a time sock tutorial that included, or rather for a heel flap and gusset. Most people take it off, they put it on a separate needle, they'll work the first heel flap, work the second heel flap, put them back on and knit down to the toe. Again, I've never seen a video on how to do that. You kind of can't do it because of the way you have to pick your stitches up. That second sock or first sock, the additional sock on the needle is going to get in the way. So for most people, for many people, they will do a short row heel, whether that is a German short row heel, just a regular German short row, Japanese short row, a fish lips kiss heel, whatever heel you're going to do, it is a short row heel that you're going to be working. I have not recorded a short row heel tutorial yet. My go-to short row heel is a fish lips kiss heel. Unfortunately, I can't teach that heel because it is a copyrighted and paid for pattern, or rather a paid for pattern. So I can't teach that. There are tutorials. I think there are 2 tutorials that are linked in the pattern explaining the way to do the stitch. That is the key to that pattern. Patty Joy, who is the designer, does have links to explain how to do that. How to do the entire heel, she does not have a tutorial for, but if you read the pattern slowly and carefully, you really can figure it out. She also has, which is brilliant, and the best part ever, she also has, thank you, Patty, so much if you're watching, she has 2 at a time instructions in the pattern for the fish lips kiss heel. It's right there. It's written down for you. Again, I've never seen another pattern in my experience that does explain how to do 2 at a time socks with a short row heel. I've never seen that. And Patty has done that for you in the fish lips kiss heel pattern. I will link that down below. That is my absolute favorite short row pattern. I am trying right now to create my own. My kids are right there in the back. Not my own, but to create a short row pattern for you to teach, because I can't teach that one. So that is still in the works. And I don't know, in light of circumstance right now, when that's going to happen, but it will be happening down the line. But in the meantime, I don't want you guys to get stuck and you're like, well, what do I do now? I can knit the cuff and knit the leg, but what do I do for a heel? So you definitely, I strongly suggest going and checking that out. Mina Phillip, who is the knitting expat, she also has a 2 at a time. I believe it's a full pattern, a 2 at a time pattern. And she has a German short row tutorial and heel that you can also have a look at. I'm 90% sure that, I know she has a tutorial for 2 at a time socks, but I'm 95% sure that she also has a 2 at a time pattern. So I will find that for you. If that is true, then I will absolutely link that in the description box for you down below. But those are your 2 resources for a short row heel, completely 100% reliable. I have also done the German short row heel. I've taken a class with Mina. It is a fantastic heel. The reason it's not my go-to or my favorite is there is a little bit more space between the stitches. I wouldn't even go so far as to call them actual holes, but there is definitely a little bit more space between the stitches on the heel. It's more aesthetics than anything else. So you decide which heel you want to use. So again, the instructions are there for you. I can't teach either one because they are paid for patterns, but the instructions are there and I will link them down below for you. Once you get past the heel, you're going to just knit straight down. Your stitches are going to be situated or managed or oriented on the needle in the perfect position if you're doing a short row heel to do the decreases for the toe. So everything is the same. You're going to decrease. You're going to decrease on one side, decrease on the other, decrease the second sock, decrease on the other. Then you're going to Kitchener stitch. You slide your stitches down. You're going to Kitchener stitch, take the first sock off, and then you're going to do the same thing. It is the same procedure. And I know some of you are like, oh, but we really want to see it. Okay. As I'm knitting this current sock that I'm working on, what I think I will do then, you know what? I'm amending this now as I'm going. So I will show you that. I can't show you the heel, but I can definitely show you the leg when I'm ready to start the heel. So you'll see the cuff and the leg. When we're ready to start the heel, I will show you the finished heel, and I will explain just a little bit on how, again, so that you can actually see it, because I think that would be a little bit better. I'm not violating any copyright or anything like that because I'm not showing you how to do the heel, but I will show you how the heel will look on the sock. Then I will show you at the end of the foot, and then I will show you how to do the decreases for the toe and how just the setup is for the Kitchener stitch. So you will see all of that. This video is just going to take a little bit longer to record because I have to knit it in order to show you. So let's pause now, and then I will my children are fighting. So I'm going to pause, and then I'm going to demonstrate two at a time. I'm sorry, demonstrate the magic loop. Okay, so I will see you in just a bit. So here we are. Now I'm going to show you how to get your stitches, get both socks and stitches onto the needle when you are using magic loop. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with that. As I said before, the key is making sure that the yarn is coming from the same place on both, right here, on both sets of stitches. Okay, you don't want this to happen. All right, you don't want the yarn coming from here and the yarn coming from here. They should not be coming from the middle. They should always be coming from the same side. Okay, so now I'm going to turn my yarn around because, as I also said before, I'm going to turn this because I have to slip the stitches from the left needle onto my right needle. So right now I am right in the perfect place to start. My yarn is coming from here and my yarn is coming from here. So I am going to slip these on, and I will do that so that you can see. It doesn't matter what you slip first. So I'm going to be consistent. I slip the front set of needles, or the front set of stitches first. In this case, it's the back, but it doesn't, you understand what I'm doing. All right, so let's just slide these over. If I get a little closer to the camera, it will focus. And I'm going to just slide these over. Same thing that we just did. Whoops. Hold on. Okay. Trying to look at this from underneath the camera because it's just a little easier for me. Okay. And we're going to slide these over. Okay, almost there. I'm sliding, always slip as if, well, slipping, sliding, always slip as if to purl. Just sliding these back a little bit. Okay. There we go. 1 second, darling boy. 1 second, sweetheart.
I need you to tie my pants.
Okay, can Kira do it? Go. Sorry, guys. The reality of recording with your children at home. Sorry about that. Okay. So here, so this one is done. I'm going to just put my double pointed needle down. Now I'm going to take the other side, take the other needle, the other half of my magic loop, and I'm going to slide over the other half of the stitches. really carefully here because this double pointed needle is not that flexible. So you just have to go relatively close to the tip, and I'm just going to slide these over. Whoops. Okay, let's go like that. There we go. Okay, the camera is trying to focus on the background unless I bring this up really close. Whoops. About to drop a stitch there. Can I catch it? Yes, I did. Okay. And just keep sliding over. Okay, almost done. All right, I'm almost there. Just sliding these back a little more. Here we go. Okay, 5 stitches to go. 2, 3, 4, careful, and 5. Okay, put that one down. Slide this needle out a little bit more so I don't lose my stitches. Slide all of these into place. I'm going to turn my bag, and now I'm ready to go, guys. Here we go. My yarn is coming, sorry, went off camera. My yarn is now coming from here and is attached to this ball. The other side is right here and attached to this ball, and now I'm just going to knit. Same thing I had been doing before. Pull this needle out, push this one in, and I will do this one round in real time for you. Okay, and I'm just going to knit across. Okay, here we go. Knitting across, just plain old knitting across here. Same thing we'd been doing before. Whoops. Hold on, just going off camera. I can't see what's happening here. Okay. Sorry, I'd split a stitch. I just needed to. Couldn't see that through the camera. I knew it was there because the needle wasn't going in the right way. Okay, and here we are. Just moving down just so you can see the needles, see the whole picture a little bit better, and I'm just going to knit across. I've actually never done magic loop, 2 at a time magic loop before. Again, I understand how to do it and show it to you, but I've never done it. So this is kind of interesting for me. I may leave it on the needles like this for a little bit just to play with it rather than putting it back on for 2 circs. Okay, so I'm done with that one. Go into the next sock. I'm just going to drop that. I separate just a little bit, and just remember, and I haven't said this yet, remember please to drop the first yarn, the first set of working yarn, and pick up the second, because what happens if you knit across, you're going to be joined at that one stitch, and the only way to do that, undo it, is to rip back. That's going to be the only way to do it, because if you cut it, that's it, you're ruining your sock. So I'm just going to continue knitting across. So just be aware of which strand you have in your hand. It's about a nanosecond to just glance at it. Some people that have been doing it for a while don't need to. But I do recommend, whether you're an experienced knitter or not, just avoid that little glitch of potentially knitting your 2 cuffs together. It's really not worth it because it's going to be miserable if you do. Okay, almost to the other side. I will show you one more turn. And here we go. Almost there, almost there, almost there. 3 stitches to go. 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to turning, picking up my bag, flipping my bag over, sliding this needle back into place. Okay, pulling out this back needle, and you're just going to continue working in regular magic loop format, and you're just going to continue knitting the leg of your sock. All right, and then I will meet you guys back when it's time for, I'll meet you guys back to talk about the heel in just a bit.